Hey, it's Sam, and I'm talking about the new moon in Aquarius in the nakshatra of Purva Bhadra, the nakshatra of the lightning serpent on March 13th. In the next couple days, we're moving toward that new moon in Aquarius, and it's a big time for expressing your unique individuality, universalizing your identity toward that sort of transpersonal, metaphysical self. So a lot of shifting, sudden changes, and awesome opportunities right now. So check this out. So as you see, I have the chart here of the upcoming new moon, which is happening on March 13th, early in the morning on the West Coast. Of course, different times at other places. And it's a time, the new moon is a time of renewal and of beginning a new cycle. And at this point, it's the cycle of Aquarius. Now, again, we had the full moon, or I'm sorry, we have these lunation cycles that begin when sun and moon come together. Then we have the middle point on the full moon. But this is the initiation of a new month, cosmic month, not calendar month, not Gregorian calendar, which is just aligning the earth and the sun, but the cosmic month, where the sun is in Aquarius in the sidereal constellation in the sky, but then the moon also joins it. So that's like the sperm meeting the egg, and a new 30-day birth happens. 30-day cycle is born, right? Then on the full moon, it's like the middle, like the midlife, where we've lived half of the cycle. Then the waning cycle, which is where we're at right now. We're on the waning Capricorn cycle right now. The Capricorn cycle is waning now. And whatever house that was in from your ascendant was your lesson that month. Now we're starting a new one. So again, we sort of go through the year and go through our life awakening and living these cycles. And by the way, this is going to be one of the major teachings in the next generation of Vedic astrology conference that's coming. Let me put this up here. There's Netflix, not Netflix, Next Generation of Vedic Astrology Conference. That's starting. There's a day and 8 hours left. And one of those classes is going to be taught, where we talk about these cycles, is going to be taught by Casey Scott, where he tells you how to integrate your personal cycle, these lunation cycles, with your natal chart, so that you're always in harmony with the personal cycles and the cosmic cycles. So again, this revolves around new moons, and again, you can still register for that. Let me put the link there in the chat. Next Gen, right here. So again, this is still available, and again, there's 6 great classes that are available. It's next weekend, so it's coming up. We have Walk in Your True Path through the Lugna and Lugna Lord with Alexis Cox, Relationships, the Least Integrated Aspect of Self with Malini Iyer. Then we have Casey Scott's class on the new moon cycles on Saturday, March 20th. Then Elise de Villiers, Divine Timing and Transits, taking us into how to integrate the birth chart with the transits and the dashas, so that you know how to separate those things. Then we have Alex Clayman on the lunar nodes and our psychic gifts. And let me tell you, I've been working with everyone in their presentations, and they're just mind-blowing. It's going to be awesome. I'm so excited and glad that I decided to put this on, frankly. Everyone has really stepped up, and it's going to be fantastic. Then I'm going to lead a panel discussion on healing and remedies based on numerous modalities and astrological situations with the whole faculty. Then, as a bonus, I'm teaching a class on tantric meditation the next weekend on the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, which is the really the basis of my meditation practice, and it has been since the early 80s. And we're going to read through the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, and then I'm going to share my experience with that text, particularly through Osho. Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh wrote the Book of the Secrets decades ago. That was my introduction into meditation and into these teachings. But we're just going to go through and look at all of the simple meditation techniques that anyone can do. And they're very simple. They're tantric, which is about surrender, relaxation, connecting with the goddess energy. It's very feminine. Yoga is very masculine. Tantra is very feminine. So again, just letting you know that these things are also available. And so this, I see we have some friends here. I see Katie Monroe is here. Hi, Katie. Nice to see you. Roxanne is here. Nice to see you, Roxanne. Other folks, Nor, how are you? Love and light to everyone. Indeed. So again, as you all probably know, I'm also recording this on Shivaratri, Mahashivaratri. We're in the abode of Shiva right now. And, you know, Shiva's energy is so palpable right now that, and this new moon in Aquarius is the sort of transition. This is very powerful Shiva energy. And as we see, well, actually, I did want to just give, I just did want to also make sure that people know about the 2021 forecast. Sorry, but there are people that come in and out here. You can get, if you haven't done this yet, make sure to get this free web class on 2021 Vedic astrology, where I go over all of these important shifts. I do want to let people know that as well. So I just put the link in there in case you haven't seen it before. But in this context, we're right here. We're still very early in the year, and we have all these other things that are happening, and you should know what they mean. But this time, right now that we're in, we've just come through all of the planets going through Capricorn. The last new moon was 30 days ago, right? That would have been like early February. And all these planets were piled up in Capricorn. And it was just like, ugh. You know how intensely the year started. The year started with all this Saturn, Capricorn energy. And I said, just wait. Things are going to start to move. Things are going to start to feel lighter. By the time we get into April, especially, it's going to be a very different year. Again, you've heard me say this the whole time since last year. This year was going to start very intensely, and then things are going to start to shift. And right now we're in that time when things are shifting, right? And this new moon in Aquarius is a big part of the initiation of that shift. And this shifting has a lot to do with moving into a higher kind of relationship with each other and with the world. You want to understand that, you know, Capricorn energy, which is the cycle that we just went through, is ruled by Saturn, just like Aquarius is, but it's the internal, it's the psychological quality of Saturn, where our fears and our stresses and our worries are internal, very fearful, stressed, and worried, very emotional, right? And this is often how we experience Saturn. I think Capricorn is much more easily to identify Saturn's quality by the attributes of Capricorn. So much so that in Western astrology, they don't even consider Aquarius being ruled by Capricorn, this being ruled by Saturn. In Western astrology, and of all the signs I've noticed, it's very hard for Western astrologers often to relate Aquarius to Saturn, its original ruler, because Saturn is so identified with the stress of Capricorn, right? And Capricorn, or I should say, relates to the stress of Saturn, where we feel Saturn really deeply. But then it moves on. So what this means is that once we deal with the stress and the internal pressure of Saturn through the sign of Capricorn, then we take that new won territory and that newly found emotional resilience and that deepening relationship with our own fears, and now it becomes service. Now it becomes something that we want to use to help others in the best sense. In the worst sense, we don't really work through our fears very well, and then we just spread it externally to the world. But in the best sense, we come through a kind of dark night of the soul where we've had to work hard to, face our fears, which is Capricorn. And then based on that, we develop enormous sensitivity, enormous compassion. One of the great things about the sign of Capricorn is there's enormous sensitivity in that sign. It's often a hard-won sensitivity because it's a sensitivity that comes from suffering and from pain, right? But because we suffer, we're sensitive to others who suffer, and we become very sensitive to the suffering of others. And we also learn what to spend our time on, what to concentrate on, because Saturn also makes us aware of time limitations. We only have so much time. So we start to kind of grow up around a lot of immature notions that we have. And again, this makes us very sensitive to other people's emotional suffering and pain, but also makes us aware of how much time we have, and that and to not waste it, right? And so, again, we're right now, globally, we're moving through a Saturn or a Capricorn to Aquarius shift for the next few years, simply because Saturn is there. And Saturn is moving through Capricorn this year, then Aquarius next year. But even now, what we just went through, we had all these planets just go through there. And now they're moving into Aquarius. So we're taking the lessons from Capricorn into Aquarius. So, it's always better. The people that know how I teach, or what I wind up doing a lot of times in these updates, is we can't just talk about, okay, now we're here and it's this. And it's this separate thing that has nothing to do with what just happened. No, we're moving. There are things moving. Capricorn leads to Aquarius. Aquarius is from Capricorn. When you've heard me talk about Capricorn, it's after Sagittarius. The hope and inspiration of Sagittarius becomes the commitments of Capricorn. Now we work through those things and we get more committed to those things that we teach and that we learn. We have to learn those philosophies really well and work through our problems with them. Then we share them in Aquarius because we want to make the world a better place. And now we know what to commit to and what to concentrate on and what to focus on. That's the Saturn part. What do we commit to, concentrate on, and want to share? That's not just in our best interest, but it's in the best interest of everyone. And that sharing in the best interest of everyone, not just ourself, is where Aquarius is opposite Leo. So it's this opposite of the other sign. I used to teach a method years ago. I used to call it the Arrowhead Principle. I like having these catchy names. And the Arrowhead Principle was essentially that every sign, if you really want to understand any sign, you have to look at the sign before, the sign itself, and the sign after. By the way, it works with houses as well. And the sign opposite. The way to really understand like anything is the thing before it, the thing after it, and the thing opposite. What came before, what comes after, and what's directly opposite. So Capricorn comes before, which is where we work through our insecurities, make a commitment. Then we're in Aquarius where we want to share those things with the world. But then after Aquarius, we go into Pisces where now that we've finished our work with the world and we've been of service to the world, which is Aquarius, now we're ready to leave the world, which is Pisces. We got to finish all of that work that we have with the world. Because in the highest sense, we kind of think that our nature here is to kind of do what we can to sort of save the world or serve the world, or one day there'll be the world will have this utopic thing. And we feel like that if we don't at least do our part in that, we're kind of wasting our life. And that's kind of where our karma gets stuck. It kind of gets stuck in that ambition to one day do something big for the world. I'm doing some big thing that the world is going to benefit from. We're related to the world and culture. But actually, that's not the last step. The last step is, but ultimately, I'm not even of the world. And I need to let go of that as well, which is Pisces. So this idea of saving the world or serving, which is a more realistic sense, again, we don't think we can save it, but in our utopic mind, we kind of have that idea. We want to be aligned with things that are going to be, a sort of savior to the world, so to speak. It's why I do what I do. I think these are the greatest teachings, and these are things that the world really needs. I'm certainly not egotistical enough to think it's saving the world or I'm saving the world or any of that. But ultimately what happens is we become humble because it's the best I can do. And again, it's very Capricorn in this way. I'm sorry, very Saturn in this way. Saturn also humbles us. When it's at its best, we're humbled. We're not arrogant about what we can do. We know we can only do our part. But our part is what we're here to do. There's nothing, we shouldn't be ashamed or feel unempowered because we can't save the world by ourselves. Again, that's a kind of dysfunctional Leo energy. Be careful of anybody who thinks they can save the world on their own. Again, that's why now we look at these Elon Musks and Bill Gates characters with a lot of suspicion, like, wait a second, you're delusional, arrogant out of your mind to think that you're going to save the world. Do your part, but do it in a spirit of service. We don't need you to save the world for us. That's too much energy concentrated in one area, right? So the really empowered Aquarian realization is that we're all in it, saving the world together. So let's be together in that sense. And so there's a humbling, yet an empowerment going on. The difficult Aquarius psychology, and when people incarnate as an Aquarius person, they can often get overwhelmed by the fact, by a feeling maybe of powerlessness, because they realize that they're just one cog in the big wheel and their little voice doesn't matter. Again, Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. So it's naturally humbling, if not, sort of crushing of the soul's, not of the soul, but of the ego's individuality. So Aquarius in general is an ego-crushing section of the sky. Again, it's opposite Leo, where our individuality can get twisted up in a negative ego. And Aquarius is opposite that, which is saying, I'm not that powerful at all. In fact, I don't have hardly any power. And so Aquarius is always trying to integrate that opposite and feel empowered and feel humble at the same time. Humbled and empowered. And by the way, Leo is trying to integrate the same lesson, but from an opposite direction. This is why the opposite sign is always absolutely crucial in being able to understand whatever sign you're looking at. Just like the yin-yang symbol, there's a dot of the opposite one in the thing you're looking at. And so we never complete the Aquarius lesson until we've integrated the Leo in it, because we can never be of service if we just feel like we're a servant and like we're just some sort of default lowly position that we have to accept because we don't have any power. No, we have to find that thing that inspires us and then find the common ground and the thing worth concentrating on and committing to. So this is a big thing of what we're doing right now. And in fact, one thing that's been happening is that the full moons have been coming before the new moons now. So the Leo full moon happened before the Aquarius new moon. People say, well, what does that mean? Well, it just means that's what's happening. And in fact, what it means is that the full moons are coming in the 8th house from the previous new moon. So the cycles they're not backwards because there is no reason for them to be linear, but they're just playing out this way. So we already, we already had the full moon in Leo, but that was opposite the new moon that happened in Capricorn. So this waning cycle of the Leo full moon is now finishing as the sun is at the end of Aquarius. So we're starting to feel this lesson now, but then very shortly the sun will go into Pisces in a couple days, because you see the sun is at 2854. And so it's going to move into Pisces very quickly. And this is going to mean that we've already been dealing with this utopic, because the sun has been in by the time we get to the new moon, the sun has been in Aquarius for 28 days. So it's been there pretty much the whole time, right after the last, right after the last new moon, the sun went into Aquarius. So what this means is that we've been living a lot of that lesson right now. And it's very much tinged with the transcendent quality of Pisces, which is coming next. And this is why the nakshatra of Purva Bhadra is so important right now, because it's the bridge between the two Rashis. Let me take a drink here. So one of the things to understand about Vedic astrology, of course, is that we have the nakshatras behind the Rashis. And again, it's stated in every Vedic astrology text, and every system up until the 9th century, including Western astrology, used the sidereal sky, which means that the Rashis and nakshatras are aligned, and the zodiac begins here with Ashwini and Aries, right? These two signs begin here. Again, every text, every astronomical text, all of them say it. And when you're locating planets in the sky, which is what we're doing here, they're always measured through nakshatras, and then the Rashis line up with the nakshatras. Again, very clear. And so when you do that, you have this matrix that's set up it's unalterable. There's nothing shifting. And that means that the transition point between most of the Rashis, 9 of the 12 signs, there's a nakshatra that bridges the Rashi. And so this shows the great connection point between the two signs. Like, for example, you can understand what Aquarius has to do with Pisces by examining that nakshatra, right? Purva Bhadra is literally that place where it's the last 10 degrees of Aquarius and the first 3 degrees, 20 minutes of Pisces. So this shows where the sort of elevated humanistic philosophy of Aquarius becomes the transcendent, metaphysical, unembodied Atman, you might say, of Pisces, where even our collective identity and universal identity must also be surrendered into the cosmic womb of creation. Our identity is not of this earth, even in the most elevated way we could imagine, that we're this being. And by the way, I've been around these beings, my guru Amma and these great humanitarians. Amma is probably the greatest humanitarian I've ever seen or heard of, hugging 50 million people for the last decades. Who does something like that? She's probably touched more human beings than anyone, maybe than any 100 people that have ever lived. But again, if that's not saving the world, I don't know what is. Even her, she's like, okay, but I'm not of this world. This ain't it either. Even though you might think, wow, look at all this great stuff I'm doing. She's like, okay, but the self is imperishable, and that's not our nature. Our nature is transcendent. And so what we have in Purva Bhadra, the symbol is the front legs of a funeral cot. It's literally where the ego is going to die here. Where Aquarius is going into Pisces, again, the front legs of the cot are in Aquarius, and the back legs of the cot, Uttara Bhadra, are in Pisces. And then the last one is the shepherd, Pushan, who leads the soul home on the final legs of the journey. But the bridge from Aquarius into Pisces is Purva Bhadra, which is ruled by a god called Aja Ekapad. Aja means one-footed. Aja is goat, or mainly goat, or it could be a sheep. It's a quadruped animal. Usually, I think it refers to a goat usually. And Ekapad means 1 foot. So it's 1 foot goat, right? And the real analogy here is that is of lightning striking. It's one of the Rudras, who are called the Rudras, who are the attendants of Lord Shiva, like his army. And again, Shiva's army is not to do battle with, with other, warlords. It's to do battle with our ignorance. Shiva is the great god. Mahadeva. On Shivaratri, can you feel it? Can you feel it? One of the Rudras. Rudra. I know I'm going to go out of my freaking mind in a minute here. Okay, so the Rudras come and destroy your ignorance, and they say, "Stop it! You're not of this world." And it's that destruction of ignorance, and it's very appropriate that this that I'm teaching this class on. I'm gonna drop another image here just to show that I'm teaching this class on the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra that people can come to in the next generation. Again, this is a bonus class, but I'm going to be teaching on this text, the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, and this is a text that describes all of these meditations that are Shiva meditations. It's a dialogue between Shiva's wife and Shiva himself, asking about how to do meditation. And one of the things that happens when you start doing these meditation practices, the techniques, what's called dharana, they lead you to a point of stillness and silence. And then what happens as you keep doing the technique is you get a lightning strike. Bam! If you keep doing the techniques, because the techniques are scientific. It's science. It's not religion. It's science. If you become present and your consciousness, and you can surrender, and you just focus on something like breath or third eye, and you can do the technique and you stay with it and you still the mind and the thoughts slow down, what happens is suddenly, bam, a lightning strike happens, and at warp speed, you're thrust into your center for like a split second. And that glimpse, it's called Satori. I believe it's a Buddhist term, but the concept is that once you get that glimpse, and in fact, until you've had that glimpse, you're still not really sure what you're doing. Your meditation can be bringing peace. You could be more relaxed. There's every reason in the world to meditate. But until you've had that glimpse, and I mean that glimpse of something that is not of this world, and there's no mistake in it. It's not some philosophy. It's not some idea. It's not some belief. No, it's an experience of your transcendent nature. It didn't come from outside. It wasn't some fantasy. It wasn't because you took ayahuasca. I'm not minimizing those experiences, but they're different, because it's easy to say, well, it was the ayahuasca, it was this, and I believe that it's really me. But no. All that's different. This is why these meditations, when you do these are pure techniques, because you engineered the whole thing. There was nothing else out there, and there's no mistake, and nobody can tell you that's not what happened. You experienced it. You're never the same. Never. It's like that's a door closes. You're like, oh my God, that's who I am. And that lightning strike of experience is the entry point into enlightenment and into nirvikalpa samadhi, which is the ever-abiding state where you don't leave your center, where you don't leave that pure nature. But it starts with a glimpse and a lightning strike. Just like lightning comes down, you see it in the sky, but lightning comes down and it actually hits the earth. There's a point where the lightning comes and hits the earth. Just like in the meditation that I'm talking about. You get more and more still, you get more and more peaceful, Sometimes it takes a long time. Sometimes it happens very quick. It depends on the nature of the mind that's meditating and how much experience you've had with the meditations before, how quickly you get the glimpses. People who've been meditating for lifetimes, it doesn't take them any time. The first time they focus on the third eye, they're having glimpses and they're like, ah! Others, it might take a long time. But this lightning strike is the real kind of energy of Purva Bhadra and how Aquarius becomes Pisces. The next nakshatra, Uttara Bhadra, is also ruled by one of the Rudras, one of the celestial serpents called Ahibunya. And Ahibunya takes that glimpse. So you see that in in Purva Bhadra, Aja Ekapad, the one-footed goat, you can see why that's lightning, because lightning comes down and strikes in one point. Bam! And you get a glimpse. Now, what can happen in this case is people get a glimpse of the soul, and they're like, oh, I've seen God. People get crazed, especially in the West, because we're not used to this. And we think because we had a glimpse, we're now enlightened. We start having these glimpses and we become fanatics about it. So I actually think that a lot of religious fanaticism and I've looked at charts, I don't have them off the top of my head, but I've seen often you'll see people that get carried away with any little spiritual experience, anything beyond this matrix at all, and they can get just way too carried away with it. Again, the ego is always ready to claim something and make something egoistic. But at the heart of the matter, you get the glimpse in Purva Bhadra, and then Uttara Bhadra, the celestial serpent, then goes deeper into it, deeply into it. That one, Uttara Bhadra and Revati, are totally contained in Pisces. So in Uttara Bhadra, the person has had the glimpse, they understand, and now it's almost like the burden to concentrate on it and become enlightened, especially if they're a spiritual mindset. If not, then Uttara Bhadra is again, it's about other things, worldly service and things like that. And then Revati is much more gentle and surrendered and much more at peace with the Pisces energy. But this transition from Purva Bhadra to Uttara Bhadra is also very important because, again, Purva Bhadra is the front legs of the cot where the ego is going to die, and the ego goes to die first in the Aquarius delusion. I'm going to save the world. The ego is still here. I'm just one of many, and for a very good reason. The ego feels good about that, and we're supposed to elevate the ego beyond just our own desires. So now they're transhuman, transpersonal. Feels very good. But eventually the ego needs to have a lightning strike, say, but you're not that either. Bam! Now sit there and meditate to connect with what is beyond. And that lightning strike takes it from I'm this part of the world to I'm not part of the world. I'm actually a metaphysical being. And then Uttara Bhadra, we go deeper into that. Uttara Bhadra is very much about just the sustained sadhana and practice. And in many ways, I don't like to say suffering, but it's the suffering of the death of the ego where it's harder. Again, the glimpse is oh yeah, and we can get really fired up about that. But the real serious spiritual aspirant and student and practitioner knows that that's just the beginning. It's not the end of anything. It's just now you've had a glimpse. And think of what that is. First, before you had the glimpse, you had no idea who you are or why you were here. You thought the universe was a playground, and now you realize the universe is a school. That's all it means. You had the glimpse that says, okay, really, it should never be overestimated. It's a beautiful moment. You never turn back from it. But all it's saying is, oh, I thought it was a playground, and I was a child trying to just be happy on the playground, and now I realize it's actually a school, and I'm here to learn. Okay, that's all it means. Nothing more, nothing more. It just means I've been completely delusional my whole life, trying to make it a playground all the time, and I realized it was actually a school the whole time. So after that moment and that glimpse, now the work begins. And it's beautiful work, but it's also arduous to have it's the ego death. It's no less than that. And in many ways, enlightenment is willing our own death. In fact, it's dying willingly, what we would consider dying. The death of our ego, because we're all ego. You've heard me say this before. We're 99.9999% ego, nines through eternity of ego, especially if we've never had that glimpse. Even once we have the glimpse, now we're just trying to make the glimpse not just be a glimpse. Now we make it a little longer. Now we learn, okay, let me calm back down again. And now instead of having it just be a glimpse, a lightning strike, okay, now I can rest in this more. And it compels us forward to learning deeper layers of ourself and going deeper into that pure consciousness that's not of this world. And that's the Uttara Bhadra part. But again, it's wrenching because we watch different parts of our ego and it's scary. It's the most terrifying thing you'll ever do. But then eventually, the last steps of the journey are the most gracious, with Revati, the shepherd, leading the soul home. So all these planets in Purva Bhadra right now, again, because Venus is there, the moon is there, and the sun is there. This like electrified cosmic serpent coming down to give you a glimpse of what's really true. And again, this is why there are two beds. The Purva Bhadra and Purva Phalguni both are beds. One is a marriage bed, which is a bed of pleasure and sexuality, which is Purva Phalguni and Uttara Phalguni. And then one is the deathbed, which is Purva Bhadra and Uttara Bhadra. And so, again, it's the death of the ego right now in this section of the zodiac. And this is why it's also, again, it's not a coincidence why we do Shivaratri now. It doesn't happen over in the other part of the zodiac, over here, or up here, whatever. It happens here. These are the two signs of Shiva, the ruled by Saturn. This is serious business. It doesn't, we can't always tell what nakshatra it's going to be in, but all of them, whether it's Tanishta or Shatabhishak or Purva Bhadrapada, these are all serious soul transitioning. Tanishta is symbolized by Nataraja, the cosmic dancer. Shatabhishak is actually, the deity is Varuna, but it's related to the upper atmosphere and the sky that's ready for all of this lightning, all of this energy like going vibrating in the upper atmosphere, where our mind is kind of connected on this sort of kinetic level to what's beyond. And that environment of Shatabhishak creates all of that sort of static charge that leads to the lightning of Purva Bhadrapada. And all of this is emblematic of the meditation that I'm talking about. Because again, before you get the lightning strike of Purva Bhadrapada, you have that other thing of Shatabhishak, that kind of, you feel the techniques they just start to electrify. Like in the Kundalini and in the astral body, it starts to vibrate and the frequency starts to get up, starts to go high into a sort of light cosmic sort of texture of consciousness. And this is where you really feel the bliss of the meditation. It's like, wow, and you can't believe this lightness. And then suddenly, bam, you're like, whoa, what was that? Suddenly this space just goes wham, opens up, and you're like, so that glimpse, that lightning, this is what the lightning is that comes. So again, that's the highest lightning, but there are other lightning strikes that we get. So be aware of these things now. Be aware of this quality of service, this quality of aligning with others. Again, we've just kind of been through a lot of that because the sun went through Aquarius, and it's about to go into Pisces, though. So one of the big things about this cycle is really the transcendence from Aquarius to Pisces, from the universal man, the universal woman, the universal person in the body, the universal person in this world looking to serve, in contrast to that cosmic being that is not here. And it's starting with this lightning strike. And again, we're getting this new moon right in Purva Bhadra. And of course, it's right. This one always happens before Shivaratri, right after Shivaratri, excuse me. This new moon is the one that's really, really potent for those spiritual practices. And so again, the other thing that people are doing, I have a few more things to talk about here, especially the other planets. I'm going to go through and talk about the other planets, the way they're aligned. But I also wanted people to know that you can get this 2021 personal assessment as well, where you can have me look at your chart. It's an audio report. It's not an appointment. I just do the recording. And, I put the link in there. A lot of people getting these. It's a really good way to just have me focus, non-interrupted. Give me a note about what's happening in your life. And then I just talk about your chart, talk about all these transits and whatnot, this stuff that we're seeing. And then also align them with these shifts, because we have eclipses coming up, 2 eclipses. We have actually, Jupiter is about to move. This is one of the reasons. This is the big shift that's happening in 2021 that had me realize early on that we were going to start off a lot of intensity. I said last year that COVID was going to last, and the pressure and intensity from that through at least June of this year. I mean, at least April, May, June of this year, until Jupiter cleared Capricorn, we were going to be really grappling with the heaviness of it. And it's played out that way. It was pretty easy to see. It's not a great prediction. I'm not sure why others that hasn't just been the kind of prevailing, particularly from Vedic astrology. It's pretty clear. But so again, it doesn't mean all of our problems are solved or whatever. None of that's true. But if things are going to be less heavy, great opportunity. So I say this as well because this sign of Aquarius is going to be very much on the ascent now, not just in this new moon here, but also, again, we see that we have Jupiter about to go into Aquarius in early April, getting out of the debilitated sign. Jupiter in Aquarius is an excellent place because all those things I talked about with being up, social upliftment, being really connected to each other. Jupiter will now bring a lot of his healing and grace and teaching into those areas. And God knows we need it, right? And so again, when we also have an exalted Venus coming up. So what I wound up doing is really focusing on the main aspects of your chart, your dashas and whatnot, what you're going through, and give you like a 30-minute tune-up. People really like these readings. They're easy for me to do, and you just get a recording in a couple weeks. So you take a quick drink here, and then we'll get back. There's a couple other things that are pretty intense right now as well. So again, we still have Jupiter, Saturn here. Jupiter's going to move into Aquarius quite soon, but we still feel that, maybe a bit of, if not depression, we're still kind of not trusting that things might get better. Oh, I don't know. I'm still kind of, can we start to feel a little hopeful or feel kind of, yeah. Again, but Jupiter's not there yet. Again, this is why astrology works and allows us to see a bit in the future. We should have, it was predicted and known that we were going to be feeling better as things start to move. We don't have all those planets there in Capricorn anymore. So Jupiter is still in Capricorn, and he's going to be moving through. But we're still, again, finishing that transit. Have to be thorough. And it's a really good time to just kind of double down and re-examine your teachings and glean the last bit of benefit from Jupiter and Capricorn, because there's a lot. And this particular one has been with Saturn the whole time. So anytime the ruler is there, it's really helping to deepen the commitment, the connection to our teachings, to our teachers. And again, I look at something like this. This all happened. Look at this great thing with all these fantastic teachers. All of these great teachers have really stepped up, have upped their game, have committed, have worked through, getting outside their comfort zone a little bit. They haven't presented this kind of thing before, stepping up more. all of them are champs. They didn't hesitate a bit. But again, it's a lot to do. We're all of us, but this is all happening with Jupiter in Capricorn. But Saturn is there going, no, if we work hard and commit, good things happen. That's the greatness of Jupiter in Capricorn. By the way, let me just put the link in there again for people who maybe have just joined. And so again, this is where we're at. This is where we're at for until early April, is he's finishing that transit. So really, really committing and concentrating to what inspires you is still really up right now. We still have the nodes here in, Rahu is still in Taurus, Ketu in Scorpio, and it's going to be there for the rest of this year. So we're still, very much kind of obsessed. We should be really, trying to reorganize and bring, a lot of practical, workable, solutions into our life. Taurus, with Rahu and Taurus, it's very, it's very fixated and obsessed on, especially values. Again, we can get kind of sucked into money as the only value or the only thing that's valuable. But we're also seeing through the illusion of that, especially because of how fragmented our society has become. When Rahu went through Gemini, so many, again, ideas and conspiracies and so many different ideas flew around, or just can't keep it straight. So Rahu going into Taurus, we're trying to get more grounded, more practical, more sort of, gathered. And that's going to continue. Ketu and Scorpio, again, this is really profoundly spiritual for the next year. Or not the next year, until early next year, about 10 months. Ketu and Scorpio, fantastic for working through not just our emotional stress, because Scorpio can be emotionally stressful, but, really channeling that and taking that, potential difficulty and just focusing on it, and focusing it like a laser on the truth, like these things I'm talking about here today, like about meditation, and just being willing to just drill right down into the facts, having the emotional courage, which is Scorpio, to get to the truth and to just drill down into it. So again, it's a simultaneous. Ketu in Scorpio is really getting down to the real truth within ourself, within our own heart, working through our own emotional triggers and insecurities. And Rahu in Taurus is obsessed externally with sort of gathering and bringing together our communities and those things that are worth organizing and bringing into fruition, and and also elevating our relationship to value, not just money. But again, as you see, Mars is also getting closer to Rahu here. Remember, I said when Mars went into Taurus, Mars had been in Aries and it was explosiveness and stuff. And I said, hey, going into Taurus, it's going to really calm that down. And it's where we're going to be more willing to defend and fight for, again, these things I just talked about with Taurus, like values and whatnot. I even used examples of like cooking and gardening and things where you take that Mars energy, which is about destruction, and using it to cut up your food or destroy the topsoil so you can plant, crops or flowers or something. This is still there, right? But it's also, as it gets closer to Rahu, there's more potential explosiveness there. But also more of a potential for the thing I just mentioned to take a more cosmic dimension as well, rather than cooking our food. Again, Rahu and Mars, it can lead to enormous discipline, and Rahu brings such perceptive awareness that anytime it gets really close to any planet, whether it's one of the lights, the sun or the moon or Mars or whatever, it's bringing out the deeper potential so that we fight the good fight, not just get triggered. And again, because he's in Taurus, which is more subdued and looking for consensus and looking to formulate, our strengthen our family ties and our relationship to the earth. I really see where on a larger scale, you can bring this into your life where you organize your community better, you serve better in the community, but also you find the highest value to be things like yogic discipline and, working hard and, choosing the right battle to make yourself strong, not just, winning arguments or whatever it might be. The negative quality, of course, of Rahu Mars is we can be triggered to fight and argue all the time. And we're going to see some of that in the mundane world, because the mundane world is always going to reveal the lowest common denominator. And particularly in a media-driven world, we're going to hear about it. It'll be overstated. It'll be conflated. It'll be abused. And that'll happen. So instead of acting like that'll be a surprise, it's not a surprise. That'll happen. That always happens. But there's also the possibility that we could see some very uplifting stories. I'll give an example. Like we just had the thing with the royal family. I don't follow that stuff. I'd look at it for the news, for the astrological connection. I wouldn't be surprised if as Rahu gets closer to Mars, we will see a big shift, maybe in the royal family. Maybe William, or they'll shock us with a level of compassion and humanity and an adjustment that we maybe wouldn't have seen if there hadn't been an explosion, for example. So something like that. But so as Mars Rahu gets closer, it's an opportunity, of course, to be more disciplined, but especially around things that are the highest value. And of course, watch your relationships and your interactions with family and people where you already have a lot of values, because that could be explosive. And those potentials are certainly there for sure. But I see people are having some conversations, which is great. I'm just sort of continuing with what I'm doing here because it's a lot to keep this straight. But in general, this next month, I'm really looking forward to seeing some real transcendent teachings. I'm also personally looking forward to teaching this bonus class on the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra. And my practices and my world has really gotten much deeper with these practices in this last month. And so again, you can also, as you see this, if you're interested in attending the Next Generation Conference, you can, I put the link here today and tomorrow. After that, we're going to put a hold on the registrations and see where we're at. But go ahead and do that. You get a lot of bonuses when you sign up. This Ayurveda and Vedic Astrology weekend course, again, you get access to that right now, 12 hours. This Living Sky Advanced Transits course, again, another 12-hour course that is very in-depth about understanding transits, and also Quantum Vedic Astrology lecture. And you also get to come to the meditation weekend the following weekend. That's just been added. So it's only $79. So it's a pretty good deal for sure for all that you get. But again, I hope that this was helpful, and, share it with others and subscribe and like and all that stuff with the channel. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, I hope this update, serves you. And again, very important time of the year as we move from Aquarius into Pisces. This is the biggest shift that human beings hardly ever make. Human beings do not make this shift, even with meditation, with consciousness, with spirituality, blah, blah, blah. All of it revolves around our life on Earth. All of it revolves around some aspect of feeling good, being happy, emotional, and this. And it all kind of stops with Aquarius, really, in most people's minds. And one day the world will be happy, and I'll be happy in it, and we'll all get along, and we'll all be this. And no, I don't have a big ego. I'm just like you. And blah, 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 blah. And it's all this person in a body, and it doesn't transcend, because the person in the body is also going to be enormously stressed out over their own death, not knowing who they really are. Again, it doesn't stop there. And again, Aquarius can also be very stressed out about the external world, how sad and despondent we can get about politics and all these things. Again, you hear me talk about these things. I talk about them, and of course, I want us to get along, and I also want the world to be this way and that way. We're here to live that karma, to serve, to love each other, to not want beings to suffer. But ultimately, I also knew a long time ago, this isn't, even if the world ends, there'll be another world. I know that might sound really nihilistic, but your karma is your karma. If it happens on Earth, it happens on Earth. It'll happen somewhere else. Doesn't mean we're supposed to destroy the planet or whatever, but we are so totally committed to our life through this body. We don't even, and this world. And we've completely forgotten that we're a transcendent being. And we never act like it. Never. We're always, everything in our spiritual life, every conversation, everything is filtered through, but I'm this person in this body, right? And I'm living in this world, right? When we elevate the matrix to something that's actually beyond this world, not just some belief we have, and it becomes an experience, experiential, then all of these teachings start to make a lot more sense. When they don't, they kind of hit an upper limit. And now's a time to bust through that upper limit. It's a time, again, we're not just because it's Shivaratri, but this nakshatra of Purva Bhadra is that glimpse that takes us beyond this relationship to the world and each other to something that's transcendent. And then once we connect with that thing that's transcendent, frankly, the only thing that's left to do is to come back down and to serve and to be of service, like my Guru Amma does. You see this with all the great saints. Once they're established in that transcendent, they have two choices. Some become what's called an avadut, which is to just kind of sit in the corner and wait for the body to fall off and just kind of, in India, they're all over the place where they know that you never know who the homeless beggar is in the corner. It might be an avadut who is actually a fully enlightened master who just doesn't want anything to do with the world. He's just kind of experiencing the senses, waiting and just kind of watching it all in bliss and ecstasy and not with just letting the world take care of itself. That's one choice. And the Buddha talks about this. He made a choice. Rather than to do that, to come back into the world, come back down, or to get fully immersed in it, which is then you go from the Pisces lesson into the Aquarius lesson, and you become like a humanitarian. This is like what Amma has done. Amma used to, when Amma was young, she would just kind of go to the beach and like lose consciousness and be like, just kind of like not of this world. Just kind of enjoy the bliss of being not of this world and established in it. But Amma always had a deep compulsion to help others and heal others. And so that cosmic consciousness comes back down into the world to serve. You do one or the other at some point. And so it's really, I think it's really important. It's always been important to me to understand this transition from Aquarius to Pisces, especially. It's one of the most important, especially if you really are trying to be a spiritual person. Because that's what spirituality is, authentically. It's simply not of this world. The spirit, the Atman, the Paramatman is not in this body. It's literally not even in the body. It's not like in the body. The body and the karma belongs to the earth and this cosmos. You don't. Your karma does. Your mind does. Your mind was created by the karma. The karma and the mind belongs to this. But your true nature does not. And nothing you have, you don't really have any of it. It has you. You don't own any of it, even your body or your mind. It owns you. Right? All right, so we'll leave it at that. I'm getting cryptic enough. So anyway, share this if you think it's not going to scare the hell out of people.